Hey everybody, Mo here again with another MOE Talk. This time it's on section 1.3 time cards. I thought I'd put my clock face on today for you because we're going to be talking about time and time cards. Now, what's the learning objective or the learning target for this section? Well, by the end of this section, you should be able to calculate time correctly, rounded to the nearest quarter hour, and know that a paycheck is correct, especially your paycheck if you're using time cards. Now you say, people don't use time cards anymore, everything is computerized. That would be false. There are plenty of companies and organizations that still use a time card, and you may be responsible for calculating your own time. Someone might check it, but you may be the person that has to figure it out. Also, if it's computer generated, computers make mistakes. You need to be able to check your time card and see if in fact your paycheck is correct. Now, I've learned over the years in teaching this class that there are sometimes students who cannot tell time off of a clock face. Well, let's just review a couple things here quick. There are 4 quarter hours in an hour. 15 minutes, or 0.25 in decimal, or 1/4 in fraction. 30 minutes, 0.5 in decimal, 1/2 in fraction. 45 minutes, 0.75 in decimal, or 3/4 in fraction. And the hour, 1.00 in decimal, or 1 in fraction. So anyway, we need to work on how to calculate this because it gets a little bit tricky, but if you pay attention, it's not that hard to do it correctly. So let's take a look at some examples. For the first example, let's assume that we start at 8 o'clock a.m. in the morning, and we work until 11 o'clock a.m. morning. So we set that up by putting the 11 o'clock a.m. on the top, minus 8 o'clock, and you can subtract directly 11 o'clock minus 8 o'clock, 3 hours. So your shift would be 3 hours. Now, let's get a little more complicated here. Let's say we start at 8:15 in the morning, and we work up until 1:45 p.m. in the afternoon. Now here's the problem. If you set that up like a normal subtraction problem where you have 8:15 on the top and minus 1:45 on the bottom and do the subtraction, you're going to end up with 6.7 or 6 hours and 70 minutes. And that is absolutely incorrect. You cannot do it like that. So do not do it like that. What you have to do is whenever the time hits 1 o'clock or after, now this is if you're moving from AM to PM. If you're moving from an AM time to a PM time, at 1 o'clock and after, you need to add 12 hours to the PM time. So 1 o'clock becomes 1,300 hours, which is military time. So 1,300 hours is 1 o'clock. Now you worked until 1:45, so by adding 12 hours, you have 13:45. 8:15 is 08:15. Now you can subtract 13:45 minus 08:15, and when you do that subtraction, you'll end up with 5 hours and 30 minutes. And that is the correct time. So that is really, really important that you understand that you must add 12 hours to any time from 1 o'clock on if, the big word there is if you're moving from AM to PM. If you're both AM times, you can subtract directly. If you're both PM times, you can subtract directly. Okay, so let's look at a little different scenario, a little more complicated. Let's just say that we start our shift at 2:15 p.m. and we work until 5 o'clock p.m. Now remember, we can subtract those 2 times directly. However, if you set it up like a normal problem, 5 o'clock on the top, 2:15 on the bottom, if you do a normal subtraction with your calculator, you're going to end up with 285. And that is incorrect. What in the world is 285? There are no 85 minutes in an hour. So 285 is incorrect. You cannot subtract 15 minutes from no minutes. So what you have to do in this case is you have to actually borrow an hour. Now an hour is 60 minutes, right? So from the 5 you have to borrow 60 minutes, so that becomes a 4, and you move the 60 minutes over to the minutes column, and the 00 becomes 60. So now we have 460. 460 minus 215, and now we can subtract. 60 minus 15 is 45. 4 minus 2 is 2. So you now have a shift of 2 minutes and 45 seconds, or 2 3/4 hours. Now there's just one more thing we have to learn about time cards, and that's rounding time to the nearest quarter hour. Now we know that there's 15 minutes in every quarter hour. So from rounding workshops that we did in the past, you know that at halfway you round up, and less than halfway you round down. So half of 15 minutes is 7.5 minutes, which means if the time is at 7.5 minutes past the quarter hour, you round up to the next quarter hour. If it's 7 minutes or less, you round back to the quarter hour. So for instance, if the time is 2:10, we would round forward to 2:15. If the time was, say, 2:05, you round back to 2 o'clock. So let's look at an example. Let's just say that I start my shift at 2:10 p.m. and I leave at 4:55 p.m. Well, you want to round the 2:10 up to 2:15. That would be the nearest quarter hour because 10 is past the 7.5 mark. So we round 2:10 to 2:15. The 4:55 gets rounded up to 5 o'clock because it's past the 7.5 minute mark in the quarter hour, so 5 o'clock. So now you can subtract 5 o'clock minus 2:15, and you'll end up with 2 hours and 45 minutes. Now the halfway points. In the first quarter hour, 7 minutes, you would round back to the hour. At 8 minutes, you'd round up to 15 minutes, or the 0.25 of the quarter hour. At 22 minutes, you would round back to 0.25, or 15 minutes. And at 23 minutes, you would round up to a half hour. At 37 minutes, you're going to round back to the half hour, and at 38 minutes, you're going to round up to the 45-minute mark. At 52 minutes, you're going to round back to 45, and at 53 minutes, you're going to round up to the hour. So those are your rounding points. Now, if you want to make a clock face on your notes or something and use it, or write those times down, those are the times that you need to remember for rounding either back to the quarter hour or forward to the quarter hour. And so that's really all there is to time cards. It's really not that difficult, but you must be very careful. You really have to be careful and realize that it's not just subtraction problems here. We're talking about time. So you're going to have to be borrowing hours and minutes. And be very careful if you're using a calculator that you don't make a mistake, because the calculator really doesn't know that you're working in time. So that's about all there is for time cards. It's really not that complicated. But now I have to go. As you can see, it's like 9:30. I've been here since 3 o'clock. We started till 9:30 just making this video and working for you. My wife called, said, "Where in the world are you?" I said, "Hey, I'm a dedicated guy, you know, got to stay here for my students, but now it's time for me to leave. I got to go home. I got to have something to eat because I got to be back here tomorrow morning for you guys again." So anyway, I'm going to take the old clock face off now, go home, see my wife, let her know what I've been doing. And I'll see you tomorrow. I'm out of here.